Okay, let's try that again. Mia, can you please tell me your name and what you had for breakfast?
Mia, and I had a yogurt with muesli and raisins for breakfast with coffee and milk.
August, please tell me your name and what you had for breakfast.
My name is August, and I had a banana, 2 eggs, and I'm about to eat an apple as well.
And Nikki, what did you have? What is your name and what did you have for breakfast?
My name's Nikki, and I had 2 eggs, some salmon, and crisp bread for breakfast. Channeling Sweden.
And my name is Andy, and I have not had breakfast yet. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Andy Schell. I am actually hosting this episode. Mia, you and I recorded this one last week on Friday. This is about the evolution of 59 North, and it's perfect that we're doing this intro now because August and Nikki, who have been a big part of that evolution, are sitting here. Say hi, guys.
Ahoy.
Hi.
Hey!
We're all here. We are having a big planning session, some of which you're going to hear about later in today's episode. But Mia, it's Wednesday, October 4th. This podcast is going to publish tomorrow, Thursday, October 5th. And Saturday, we're off to the U.S. for Boat Show. What are you excited about?
I'm really excited to go to the boat show, and been a year since we were there last time, and we're going to go to the U.S. see family, and we're going to have some big parties at the show. So, yeah, a lot of fun stuff happening.
Nikki, do you want to just give us the quick rundown on what is actually happening at Boat Show? You're going to be there again with us. We've got the Woodwind sale Thursday, which is still available. You can go online, 59-north.com/boat show, see that. And then Friday and Saturday, Nikki, what are we doing Friday and Saturday?
We are, on Friday afternoon from 5 until 9. We have got a kind of a fundraising party with Matt Rutherford and his ocean research project down at J-World. And then on Saturday, Mia and I are hosting with Women Who Sail our second women's event. And we've already got loads of sign-ups for both of them. So check out the events page on the 59 North website to just register. They're both free.
And all three of us are going to be at the booth for the
Correction,
week.
the party, the Friday party costs $20.
$20, because it's a fundraiser for Matt. Anyway, the three of us are going to be at the booth as well, which is 59 North booth. We're going to be right next to the YouTube channel booth. It'll be easy to find us. And of course, me and Lee and Ryan and Tom are going to have the cannons there as well. So if you want to come see a cannon and buy a cannon, you can do that. August, how much FOMO are you going to have not being with us next week?
A lot, tons. So I'm excited to watch all the fun stuff you guys will post and stuff. And I'm also not looking forward to it because I will be sad that I'm not there with you, but maybe next year.
Maybe next year. One of these days, we're going to get you out there. So meanwhile, Eastbjorn, August, give us a quick Eastbjorn update, because I think literally last night she finished her last passage of the season and is about to go under the knife again.
That's true. Yeah, as of 2:30 this morning, Eastbjorn's season is a wrap, and they just arrived to Sweden as well. So we're in the same country. This feels pretty cool. And yeah, she's going into Vinda Marine now for a refit over the winter, which is going to be very exciting. There is a long list of things that we're gonna do to the boat, and it's a cool kind of. There's nothing wrong with the boat. There's nothing that we need to fix. It's all just preventative upgrades, kind of cosmetic. Cool, fun, great things. So I'm very excited. New instruments and new paint, all that kind of just going to look brand new, I think.
Yeah,
it's going to be amazing.
I can't wait. That's going to be cool. I'm happy that it's been in our backyard too, Mia. We're going to have to take a couple drives down to the west coast of Sweden this winter.
That's a good excuse to get down there.
It is indeed. So nice to have you guys here. I'm excited for today, and nice to hear from you guys on the podcast. Hope to see lots of you at Boat Show next week. Until then,
hold fast.
On the Wind is supported this season by AG1, the daily foundational nutritional supplement that supports whole body health. I gave AG1 a try because offshore, eating balanced nutritional meals comes secondary to managing the boat, not to mention managing my sleep and seasickness. I drink AG1 as part of my routine in the watch schedule, usually before my first cup of coffee, and it makes me feel confident that I'm getting the nutrition I need no matter how the rest of my day's eating goes. I actually started drinking AG1 years ago as part of my fitness routine ashore before 59 North even existed, But now that I spend a big chunk of my time at sea each year, it's become an even more important part of my routine in order to maintain my overall health while my main focus is required elsewhere on the boat. I can cover all my nutritional bases for the whole day with 1 scoop of AG1 mixed in my water bottle each morning. It tastes great, makes me feel great, and it costs less than $3 a day. If a comprehensive solution is what you need from your supplement routine, then try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free AG1 Travel Packs with your first purchase. Go to drinkag1.com/onthewind. That's drinkag1.com/onthewind. Check it out. On the Wind is also supported by our very good friends, back again, Forbes Horton Yachts. We've had a fantastic relationship with Forbes over the years. He's been a friend of mine in Annapolis and a work colleague for many, many years. In fact, since long before 59 North even existed. Forbes is a sailor himself, so he understands boats. He understands offshore sailing especially. He and his wife took a Tartan 34 to the Caribbean and back in the day. And they still sail today on the Chesapeake. If you have a boat that you're looking to buy, whether or not Forbes is listing it, he can be your buyer's broker. Or if it's come time to sell your boat, he can, of course, list it and be your selling broker. Forbes is fun to work with. He's a really great guy, knows his stuff, and is not your typical blowhard broker. So check out ForbesYachts.com. That's FORBES, ForbesYachts.com. And if you're around at the Annapolis Sailboat Show, he will be there at the X Yachts exhibition, which is out on the docks, out by where the Woodwind is, and you can meet us there. We'll announce this later, but a couple times a day we're going to fire the cannon out at Forbes's booth with X Yachts. So go say hi to Forbes if you're at the boat show this year, and if you want to buy or sell your dream boat, check out ForbesYachts.com. Thanks again to Forbes Horton for sponsoring this episode of the podcast. You're listening to On the Wind, my podcast about offshore sailing. I'm your host, Andy Schell. This episode is about 6 years in the making. Mia and I sat down in the container in Sweden and reflected on what it's been like to take 59 North from what effectively was a lifestyle business, a way that Mia and I could make a living going sailing, to what now is a real business. We've got staff, we've got boats, we've got money that's scary to talk about, all the rest of that stuff. It's been stressful, it's been up and down, and we reflected on what that process has been like and give a kind of a cool 59 North update that we've been teasing for a while now. So I hope you enjoy today's show. Okay, Mia, we promised everyone that we would do a full episode about this sort of evolution of where we were at the end of 2018, where we decided to grow the business so that we could not spend 6 to 9 months a year on the boat, versus where we are now, where we, knock on wood, finally might be over the hump. We mentioned this in an intro a week or two ago, and now we're going to do a deep dive on it. At the risk of this being like propaganda about 59 North and why we're so great, I think you're going to find that this has been, from my perspective, well, before I give my thoughts, where has the expectation of okay, we're going to do this, how's it going to go, versus how it actually went from your perspective?
I mean, it's a complete roller coaster. It's so much ups and downs. And I think a lot of the stress comes with the downs, but then also it goes up. And I think it's the commitment, I think, is the one that has stuck through it. You have to be committed to what you do, because otherwise it's not worth it.
Ben, I did a podcast with Ben Shaw last night for the Out the Gate podcast, and he asked me, did you think it would take this long to get to this point? Now, it's only been 5-6 years. Did you think about, I answered that I didn't really think about it in terms of time. Did you think about it? Did you think in 2018 that in X amount of years we'll have this figured out?
I wouldn't say it that way, because I don't think we have it figured out in that sense. But I think it's we never tried to make something really big. It's not like we had like a one boat and had a vision of like, we're going to grow this big. We had a vision of like, we're going to do this because we want to. And as things evolved, we did things we wanted. And I think we had the vision what we wanted, but then the work that came with it and the challenges that came behind the want has been harder than I think it was. But I don't think it's like we started somewhere, had a vision to get, we started at A and had a vision to get to K, and now we're at K. To me, it's more like we just started walking on a road where we wanted to walk, and then we ended up somewhere. And it's been planned, but not like, we never said in 2016 when we started with Eastbjorn that always we're gonna have 3 boats, or we never had that. We just want to do something we wanted to do, right? So it's hard for me to like answer in that specific way.
Well, I answered. Ben asked, "Do you think I think it would take this long?" I never. The time portion of it never really occurred to me. It was more, I didn't think it would be this hard.
No, and I think if anyone would know how hard it is, they wouldn't even start. And if we would have known how hard it was, I don't think we would have started.
Well, no, actually, like that was going to be my next question. Do you think, knowing what, and we're going to talk a lot about this, we're going to go into all these specifics here, but like, would you do it over again?
Probably, because I like where we are. So I think yes, but like it's probably the same question people ask like when having kids, like, is it worth it? Yes. Was it harder than expected? Yes. So I think it's hard to like say yes or no. I wouldn't do it over again, because where would we be without it? We probably would do something similar. So.
Well, we'd still have that same question, and that's where I want to start. The specifics of this is: do you remember? Was there a moment or a conversation or a realization where it kind of occurred to you that like we got to do something differently if we want the life that? Because I think it would go even further. When we started 59 North in 2015, it was a way for you and I to create more, trying to figure out a lifestyle more so than building a business. Do you agree with that?
Yeah.
It was a way for us to get paid doing what we wanted to do.
And sail with people we want to sail with. Yeah.
So, but it didn't feel like a business. Whereas this next iteration was like, okay, now we have to build a business because of the way of the lifestyle changes we wanted to make required us to build something bigger than just us. What I started to ask you is, do you remember a conversation, a moment, a time where you realized that like what we were doing successfully with you and me on Eastbjorn was not sustainable?
I mean, I think it was sustainable at the time because it was just you and me. And I think if we would have had decided not to have kids or a family, maybe we would have had it done in a different way. So I think that conversation almost came up in the same time as like, should we have a family or not? And when we decided kind of like, okay, if we want to have a family, we want it to be big. And I think it also remember that when we were at boat shows and stuff and involved all our friends to help us at the booth, it was not a business, but we had friends, helping out. And we also realized how much more fun it was to work together with people rather than just you and me. And then also like when we started asking more and more from our friends, we felt it wasn't unfair to ask them to do all the work for us without giving them something back. And building a business with our friends is kind of, I think, how it all started, that we wanted to have more people involved. We wanted to have people to bounce ideas from, because sometimes you and me, or I think any husband and wife, being stuck in that vacuum is not always very sustainable.
I actually kind of
to have more people.
I'd kind of taken that for granted because we have such a cool team that we work with now, that I had forgotten that was one of the motivations for us to make it a little bit bigger, is that it was just you and me in a bubble.
And I think also we decided, like, if we're going to involve our friends and we're actually going to pay them, the business have to make more money. Otherwise, there's not going to be enough to get around the pod. We can't just sail 3-4 trips on Eastbjorn every year, pay ourselves, and then give our friends some pay. It just needed to be more money to get around in order to sustain it. Not that we're going to get rich to do this. The money was a motivation in order to be able to sustain it, not to be rich and sell it, right?
One of the goals of this podcast is to kind of like, back in the day when it was just you and I, and we were starting to build 59 North, I did a lot of solo episodes where I talked about the financial side of it, how the business was doing, all that stuff. It's now like you and me are the founders, but you can almost look at it as like, okay, we had this one iteration that was just you and me. and it was the lifestyle thing. And then in 2019, one of our former crew, who actually became a very good friend, approached us and said, "Hey, have you guys ever considered like taking on investors?" And I was like, no. And what does that even mean?
Yeah.
And then that was kind of the very first time that I think can look at it as a shift from like, okay, you and I have a lifestyle. Now we're building a business.
Yeah.
And now so he was the first to come on board.
We have 5 other people now.
So you, me, plus 5.
Mm-hmm.
So there's actually 7 of us. Mm-hmm. And you and me still own a large majority. I think it's like 65% or something like that. But that's been a really, I've through some of the people that have come on board as owners, like it's almost been like a grad school in like business like I've learned so much about like business from this stuff that I like when that first guy came in, I didn't even know what it meant. Like, okay, yeah, and what does that mean?
Yeah, and I think it's interesting. Like, you can either learn all this and then start, or you just start and then learn along the way. And I think if you learn first, you realize how much it is to do that you never get off the ground.
So what's been the most interesting thing for you about having other people actually own part of 59 North?
I mean, I think it helps a lot to have people to bounce ideas with. I think that's like the biggest benefit, because they all have like expertise in different fields. And just to know that we're part of something a little bit bigger than just you and me, I think that makes it just more fun. What about you?
I think the learning aspect, the stuff, people that like, especially on the financial side. I mean, I talked about actual numbers in financial stuff, 5-8 years ago when we first got it started. And now those same numbers have inflated to a degree that's very scary. And learning about like how you manage that. And like we're right now, I'm in the process of working with our accountants to make like better budgets and cash flow predictions and all this stuff. And like the stakes have gone up, and that's been scary for me. But like having these other people that are more business, that come from like an actual business school background, makes it less scary, I think, for me. And I've learned a ton about that stuff. And I've also learned that I need help with it.
Yeah.
Like I can't manage budgets and cash flow predictions and all this stuff. And I'm not very good. It's like, it's a big weakness. And I realize I need help in order to make it.
But also
good.
One big benefit of having a few more people on the team is that we can do the things that we really enjoy and are good at and are fast at. And like, it's like you can be more efficient. Like you can have other people do things that we don't like to do and we are not good at. And like, if I'm going to spend a year learning something rather than having another person helping with it, I think it's much more efficient, because A, I don't like it, and B, I'm not good at it. And I'm never going to be good at it because I don't like it.
What's an example? What is something that you really don't like that's like because my sister's a teacher.
Taxes. Taxes and money.
My sister's a teacher, and she always complains about, like, she's a special ed teacher, and there's a lot of paperwork surrounding special ed in the U.S., apparently, according to her. And she always talks about how much she hates the paperwork. And I said, look, like every job has an aspect that you don't like. So I'll ask you again, what are the aspects of what we do now running a business that you just don't like and aren't good at?
I mean, I think like I said, taxes, business, money, like that kind of overall, not just the day-to-day stuff. I don't think that really matters. I think everyone have to be involved in that. But like the overall business planning strategy, I think that's something that have no interest in learning.
Don't like it and don't want to like it. Don't want to know about it.
How about you? What's your fields?
Oh man. I actually like the financial stuff, but I'm not good at it. Like I'm good enough at Excel that I can get myself into trouble. Because like what I've learned in creating all these cash flow predictions and budget spreadsheets and stuff is like really fun playing with numbers in Excel. But like you make one mistake in one tiny column and it like messes up. You could be like a positive or negative sign or a decimal, and your prediction is off by like, it's like, okay, the business either succeeds or it fails, and it's like, wait a minute, I'm in over my head here. I can't, this is too high stakes for me to be doing this. So, but what the cool thing is, like now we have this accounting firm we're working with in Sweden, and they're creating these, like I had a meeting with them the other day where they have this super big, complicated Excel sheet. And like, I can tell them what I want out of it, and they know how to do it, and they know how to do it right. Like I'll say, okay, here's the things that we want to input into this spreadsheet. For example, costs of paying our skippers and mates, how much the food costs on each trip, whatever, things we can input. And then I need to know out of that, okay, how much money do I have left to pay myself? How much money do we have left to maintain the boats? And like, I can tell them what goes in and what I want to come out of it. And they just go and do it. And like watching them do it, like on a screen share, it's just like, oh, like, okay, I really have no idea what I'm doing. Like, this is like next level.
I mean, the thing is too, like,
nerd stuff.
Thing is too, like, everyone don't have to always invent the wheels. That's why there are experts in the field that can actually help with that kind of stuff.
The hardest thing, though, I mean, this is like, we're really jumping around here, but like, from a small business, is you need help with this stuff, and you don't have the money to do it.
Yeah.
As you're building the business, that's been like the hardest thing of all. And now we're finally, knock on wood again, like we have a little bit of a cushion that we're able to get help where we need it. The hope being that the help you pay for is going to make the whole thing more efficient and save you money or make you more money in the long run.
I was just going to say that sometimes taking help actually helps in the long run, because we can focus on the stuff that we're good at and do well, and then we don't have to do those mistakes and can actually get accurate things, and it saves us money in the long run. It's a
good segue on mistakes. How do you feel about Ice Bear, the Ice Bear experience?
I'm very happy we sold her when we did, because I think one of the plan was to maybe keep her and like do a transatlantic on her and like try to like keep her running as well. And I think knowing now how little time we have for anything, I think that would have been a big time commitment that we would not have time for. So selling her was the best thing we did.
Well, you're skipping over the fact that we had her sold, and at the last minute, the people that were going to buy her, Taylor's OGR, they're in the OGR now on another boat. And I was not happy about it at the time, but like they were raising money and they couldn't raise the money. Like
I mean, I think
don't necessarily blame them for it. But like we had the boat sold. This is the one instance I've talked about real numbers before, and I will now. We had the boats. We bought Ice Bear for $300,000. We had her sold for $360,000, which included the race fee, which we paid like $50,000 for the OGR fee. They were going to buy the boat and our race entry. And a week before closing, it all fell through.
Yeah.
And we ended up selling the boat for $170,000 because we had to. We lost a bunch of money. We had to scramble to raise more money to finish the Falcon refit. And like, that was very stressful. But I'm more asking you, like, do you think the Ice Bear project, was that a mistake? That's what I said about the segue. Was it a mistake? Because I think it's easy to think of it. Well, it depends how you think about it. Do you think it was a mistake? The fact we bought that boat in the first place?
It's so hard because, like, in one way, like, if we would not have bought her, we would not have bought. And it's not like we choose between 3 different boats and picked that. It was more like Ice Bear was more like a concept that we bought, and I think she was a really good boat for the time. But then I think we realized how much of a headache it was with the coding. I think we learned so much through that. So I think, and because it was complicated coding an older boat that was not built for it. That was a big complication that was a big complication we were facing through the whole Ice Bear process. And we finally got it done. And I think it took a lot of stress to get that done. But I wouldn't say it was a mistake. It was more, I think we learned, I hate to say this, but like everyone, you learn from your mistakes. But I think we learned so much from the mistakes that we decided that Falcon was a good boat to buy.
I think more than that, though, we learned that it worked. Like, it worked to have, because if you recall, like, I don't think you and I ever questioned this, but there was a lot of people, my dad probably most vocally, questioning whether there was a model with which we could sell passages on a boat that one of us wasn't on board. Because we had become such the face of everything. And did people want to sail offshore under our flag, so to speak, or do they want to sail offshore with us, with you and me?
Yeah, that's what I said. Ice Bear was more like a concept than the boat itself in one way. If you think about it, like we tried a new concept by having a second boat. And I mean, she was a great boat for what we were doing, but not good enough to make the business work. And
what you're talking about with coding is one of the things that we decided, this was in 2019 when we had those first couple friends of ours who came on as investors initially just kind of for fun. And when I'm talking about, like, the first couple investors we had were friends of ours that put in like relatively small amounts of money just to be part of the team, basically. And we had everybody here at our house in Sweden, and we decided like, okay, if we're going to do this, we got to do it by the book. Everything has to be properly insured, properly what you're referring to is coded, like flagging and like flag rules, and be able to legally do what we're doing. And that, because we had already bought Ice Bear, it was very hard to retrofit that boat and make it right. And that's like down to the way the boat's set up, safety equipment, and the licenses that the staff have to have. And then we had the secondary part to that was like Eastbjorn under the American flag. We realized there's a lot of gray areas there, and it's like, well, this is probably not great. Now we need to figure out what to do with the other boat as well from a coding standpoint, which is why she's Norwegian flagged now. So I think like...
And I think a lot of people, even just on a private level facing this, it's hard to get insurance. We could not... Our insurance company dropped us, and we went through an agent, and they could not find anyone that could insure Eastbjorn under the way we were sailing. And I think even private people sometimes have a hard time finding insurance as American boats when you're sailing across oceans.
And this is something that like we never thought about when it was just you and me. It was kind of just like, well, it's just you and me. We're just going to sort of, my whole philosophy of beg forgiveness, don't ask permission. We just did it. But like now it was like, okay, well, we can't, whatever risks we're taking personally, we can't ask people that work for us to take those same risks to their, I mean, it's like a career type thing. So we said, okay, we're going to do this by the book. Well, this is one of the instances where if we knew what the book meant, we might not have tried, because this was, I think, probably the most, I don't even want to say stressful, just freaking annoying.
Yeah.
It's like bureaucratic, annoying government bullshit. Like the whole, if I'm like a, pro-capitalist, anti-regulation, like this is one area I'm just like, well, this is stupid.
But it allows us to do what we do legally.
It does. And I'm glad we went through the process, and it did. It was a big reason we ended up buying Falcon. But along the way too, I mean, Ice Bear was, I think you knew this. I think I knew this in my gut. I mean, do you remember when I actually made the deal to get Ice Bear?
In Svalbard?
Yeah. You were going nuts because you're like, why are you doing this right now? We are in Spitsbergen getting ready for the next trip south. What are you doing on the phone wasting time with this? How did you actually feel about that? I'm putting words in your mouth now.
No, it's just like you said. Why in the world are we doing this right now? We can wait. But you cannot, when you get something in your head, you can't stop it. It's like
ready, fire, aim.
It's like a snowball that just tumbles down the hill.
So I remember walking around the sort of like commercial area in Longyearbyen amongst like shipping containers and stuff on the phone with the owner of Ice Bear that we bought from at the time, and making a deal with him to charter the boat for a year and then buy it. And I remember it was like one of the few times where like I had a gut feeling that this was the wrong decision, and I did it anyway. And it's one of those things in hindsight. It's like I definitely didn't follow my gut in the moment, but ultimately it worked out. But I think if I had followed my gut and slowed down a little bit, I think I would have saved myself a lot of stress over the ensuing 3-4 years, because we would have still done this anyway. I just felt in the moment like, nope, this is the perfect boat. It has to be this. And I didn't do enough due diligence. So my point is, we overpaid for the boat. It ended up costing us more money on the fly because stuff kept breaking down. And then we lost money when we sold it. So like, thankfully we got through the whole process, but it was a very, we didn't make, you and I didn't make, I don't think we made any salary over those years. We made no money because there was so much going back into the boat, which ultimately we sold and didn't get back anyway.
Yeah.
So like from a financial perspective, I think Ice Bear was a mistake.
Yeah,
from a philosophical perspective, I think it was the right thing. The second boat thing was definitely not a mistake.
No, and back to the boat itself. She was a great boat to sail.
Yeah.
I mean,
great.
So like, I don't want to bash her. It's not Ice Bear's fault.
Well, so
it was more like the combination of being a non-coded boat trying to make it coded. I think you started with something that was not going to be the way we wanted it to be, and therefore it was not the right boat. But if it would have been if the boat in a vacuum was great.
But what's also missing is we bootstrapped Eastbjorn and we bootstrapped Ice Bear, meaning we did it we paid for it on the fly as we went.
Yeah.
And had we done with Ice Bear what we did with Falcon and had actually had money up front to do a refit before we started it, it would have been a very, very different outcome, I think. We might still have the boat, but we didn't have the money at the time, and we did what we could. And that's where really I learned that, like, okay, we're taking this from a lifestyle thing to an actual business. And to build an actual business, you need some capital, some money to get it off the ground, because you can't, the level we were talking about with the bigger boat, more people, you had to have some bankroll to set that up. And that's where the sort of second level of investor stuff came in. That happened, I don't want to use people's names, but like that happened very serendipitously. It was another former crew on one of our trips, and just very serendipitously off the cuff made a comment. He's like, hey, love what you guys are doing. You ever interested in doing something? Like, I'd be interested in helping finance it. And that was serendipitously the perfect timing, because it was like right after we decided to drop out of OGR, and it was just a good opportunity. And I had been looking at Falcon, like it had been for sale since we bought Ice Bear. And I was like, well, since you mention it, here's this old race boat that the reason we didn't seriously look at it with Ice Bear is because we didn't have the money to turn it into a cruising boat. But now we have somebody that says, hey, I'd be interested in doing this. And it's like, oh, wow. Now, the mistake to that was we vastly underestimated the time and the amount of money it would cost to convert Falcon into the right boat. But we did it. And like, that's the kind of thing that I think we learned from taking a lifestyle business to making it a real business.
Yes.
Normally when you're in a two-way conversation, you say, yes, and
Yes.
we're doing improv here.
Oh.
So do you have anything to add? What was it? I remember it was a very stressful time for us because of the OGR decision, and it was very clear. I mean, talk about the OGR thing for a little bit, because you like to say that you knew it wasn't going to happen all along. You just needed to let me go through the process.
Yeah, I mean, you always have gut feelings, right?
Yeah.
And my gut feeling was saying that we're not doing it. Not like in a protest way, just like I could just not see us.
Couldn't picture it happening.
Couldn't picture it happen for some reason. And usually when I can't picture things happening, it usually is that way. And I think maybe I had the reality check, which I usually have a better reality check on things than you do. And I think that's why I probably had that feeling. And I think you may have had that as well, didn't you? No?
I was so determined to make it happen, but at the same time, it was hard to visualize, okay, I'm going to be on Ice Bear in the Southern Ocean doing this race. That was, but at the time, I took that as, this is such a big challenge that how could I possibly visualize that? Because it's so far beyond anything I've ever done before.
Yeah, and I think if we would do OJR in the future or anything, it needs to happen when things are a little bit more calm, because it was a lot of things were happening at the same time. And I think to make that project really fun, because that's what we want to do, right? We want everything to be fun and enjoy it. That's the whole point of doing things. And I think if we would have done it this edition, it would have been more stress and less fun. So I think we could have done it, but I'm glad we didn't, because it would not have been the right purpose and the right outcome for us.
One of the things we talked about when we first signed up for OGR, I think when we signed up, you were pregnant with Axel, but he didn't exist yet. So we were like, okay, well, when this happens, he'll be 3.5, because the race just started like 3 weeks ago.
I know.
And at the time, it was all theoretical. We had no idea what a 3.5-year-old would be, but we thought, well, that he'll be old enough to, like, I'll be able to go away, and you and I could sail the Cape Horn route together. He can stay home with the grandparents. Now that he exists and is 3.5 and we're there, do you think we could have done it with a kid?
I think if we wanted to, yes. Did we want to? No. I think those are two very different things. I think we could, but I don't think you and me want to leave him for 3 months or whatever that would be, 2 months together with grandparents. I would have a hard time with that.
Yeah, I think I could have still done it if you would have come to all the stopovers with Axel, but I don't know that, like, because what we've just sort of glazed over here is how much of a toll the last 6 years has taken primarily on my mental health, that everything surrounding it's just made life more difficult outside of work for us as a family. And then to add that level of family stress where you're dragging Axel around the world by yourself on an airplane, With me not in my best mental health, I think that would have been a humongous challenge.
And also, I think it would have been a distraction to what we're trying to build with the whole business. And like, we have a really cool thing going on here, and that would have been truly a sidestep because we would have had to put almost the other passages on pause. And I don't think we would want that now in hindsight.
You mentioned before that this whole process has been like a roller coaster. Just off the top of your mind, what are some of the highs and what are some of the lows that you've experienced since we set this in motion back in 2019?
I mean, some of the highs just recently from this year is to be able to like leave you and Axel at home. I go sailing across the Atlantic with Chris, really cool skipper, with 8 fantastic crew, and like, we can do this. Like, I can go and fulfill my dreams within this, but also have a family. The fact that we can like, that it actually works, we can do both. You can go to Greenland and sail, and we still have a happy family and household. Those are some big highlights for me, because I wouldn't want to give that up. And I think the lows definitely have been like stressful moments, like when things are coming up to a time pressure, like when Falcon was getting overdue, and like, I think I'm very sensitive to time pressure, and those are some of the biggest stresses when you have too little time to do what you want to do right.
Do you have an example?
No, I think like the end of Falcon refit, it went over time, and it made our time in England. We moved to England for.
Well, tell that whole story from the beginning, because I agree with you. That was the absolute nadir, the low point of this entire process, which also coincided with sort of the end of the road of this whole process. It was like the last stretch. So tell the story of like how we put that together.
So we were supposed to, me, Axel, and Andy moved to England for 7 weeks to be for the end of Falcon, and it should have been done. First, it should have been done in the fall. Then it was going to be done around Christmas, and then it even went overdue. So,
and our first passage with paying crew was in February.
Yeah, and it just was more stressful. We got it done, and everything was good, but it was way stressful. And I think
what was stressful about it? What specific? Like, let's talk about the day-to-day stuff, because I think like that was the hardest stretch for.
I mean, the day-to-day stress was that we were trying to get the boat set up, and we still had carpenters doing final touches on the boat. So like, we were very, what do you call it? Like, tied to what we could do with the boat, because we had people working on systems and stuff.
Well, not to mention, like, I'm there. I mean, Adam was there. Adam was like the hero through all this, because he had been there like from the previous summer, like almost every day. You and I moved down there. I'm basically at the boat from 7 a.m. till 7 p.m. every day. So you had Axel, sort of single parenting Axel. Tell him we were walking him to his he got his little British daycare. Tell that story.
That was so sweet. We found a daycare about 20-minute walk away. So me and Axel walked every morning and every afternoon.
But talk about that first week when we got there, and it was like,
oh my goodness, it was like a bad system over England. It was raining sideways and was like blowing 30 knots for like the first week. And I was walking back and forth with Axel in the stroller, and I was like, no. This is not what I signed up for. But then it turned out better. But no, yeah, so I think that it was when you don't have enough time, that stresses me out.
I think yes, for sure. But I think what was like the sort of the extra stress to that is because there was so much attention paid to the boat and the business, you and I had no life really at all. And that was really tough for us out. There was talk about work-life balance and time to take care of yourself and stuff. We had none of that. We couldn't take care of ourselves or each other. And that was like, to me, that was, well, I know for you it was hard. And for me, it was also hard.
Yeah. But we made it.
Do you think we made it?
What do you mean?
Like now, do you like, I sometimes feel like, yeah, we're sort of over the hump, but then I feel like something's just going to like I have this sense of dread when I say that. I feel like I'm jinxing it. But do you feel like the worst is behind us? Not the worst. I don't want to say worst, the hardest. Do you think the hardest part is over?
I mean, yes, of course, because Falcon is now built. Now we have to maintain the systems we have, but we managed to get Falcon the way we wanted it. So it's definitely behind us. But doesn't say that we're not going to have things happening to the boat, because it's a boat that is sailing a lot of miles with a lot of people throughout the year. But I mean, that hump is definitely behind us. Don't you think so?
Yeah, oh, for sure. I mean, I feel it. Like when I got back from Greenland this summer, back to Sweden, back here, it was like, felt like the first time I could actually like exhale and things were happening and it was good. So looking ahead, what makes you anxious now?
Well, it makes me anxious because with Falcon now we added 2 more spaces on each trip, and we've added more passages every year. So when we went from Isbjörn to Ice Bear, we added a big amount of capacity because we added a second boat and we also added 6 bunks in each trip.
So just a little math. I think when you and I were sailing on Isbjörn, it was like, say it was 10 trips a year with 4 people.
40 people.
40 people, maybe 12 trips a year, so 48 people. Then we added Ice Bear. Now we added 10 trips, 6 people, now we're at like 100 people. Okay, so that was more than double capacity. Now going from Ice Bear to Falcon, now we're doing 12 to 15 trips a year on Falcon with 8 people. And I think we're at like 100, but with both boats, I think we're up to like 100 and almost 180 crew
and we
in
added
a
2
year.
racing passages.
And the racing passages, which are 9 or 10 people each. So we're like, say 180. I mean, we've like, compared to what we did on Isbjörn in the beginning to now, we've more than almost we've quadrupled our capacity.
Yeah. And I think also like that to say, we don't have to have 8 people to sail Falcon. 8 people is great, but it doesn't have to. I think we have to also like accept going forward that we're probably not going to sell all the bunks.
Well,
this
is top of mind because the trip back from the Azores to Portugal, I think still has, as the time we're recording this, has 3 spots open on it.
Yeah.
And that's been we've had very, very good luck where we've never had to think about unsold bunks. So now it almost feels like, so if you look at the percentage throughout the whole year, these are the only 3 bunks that haven't sold on any trips all year.
No, we had 1 trip on the last, 1 bunk on the last trip and 1 bunk on Isbjörn in
okay,
January.
so what's that? 5 out of 170 something. Yeah. So it's like a 98, 96 or 97% like, so a 2 or 3% vacancy rate in the lingo. I mean, that's like impossible.
That's insane.
So what worries me a little bit is like, you think like, okay, oh, well, there's 3 bunks open. Oh, are they doing okay? Like, is the business okay? It's just, that's how I feel. Like, it's from an image standpoint, the people on that trip, if there's, now we're gonna put people in those bunks one way or another because we have this apprentice program now, which is part of the reason we're doing that. But like, it does make me worry a little bit that, are we gonna be able to do this? And one of the things that I'm working with on the accountants now is what is actually the break-even point on a number? Like, how many people on each boat do we need to put there that are paying in order to make it actually not lose us money? Yeah. But at some point, we can't just change trips, like, because of the nature of our calendar. We can't just say, oh, we're undersold, we're going to cancel this one, because the boat still has to get from A to B. Yeah. And if it does, we still got to pay the people that are doing it. We still got to buy the food. We still got to buy the docking, all that stuff. So I agree. That's something that makes me anxious. I think you see it more because you're actually the one that is sort of responsible for communicating with crew and doing all the paperwork required to fill all the bunks and all the rest of that stuff. And we had a slump this summer. There was a period where like everyone seemingly was out sailing on their own boats, and there was several weeks where we had nobody sign up, and we're just like, oh boy.
Yeah, but then you're looking back throughout the years, and in the summertime, no one is signing up for trips because people are having too much fun.
So that's been, from like a budgeting perspective, that's been one of the hardest things to model, to like predict your cash flow, because we don't know. We need to go back now and look like, what is the average time between when someone signs up, because we take a 50% deposit up front, and when the trip is delivered. So let's just say that's a year, but that's hard to time from like a budget standpoint. So when you go a whole summer without getting any signups, you're not getting any of that income in during that summer period when both boats are running. Then when you want, the balance payments are due 60 days before the trip. Those are very easy to time. So once something's sold, you know exactly when the money's going to come in from like a budget standpoint. So that's been one of the stressful things for me to try and work with the accountants and model, is like, where are the peaks and valleys in the cash available to the business? Because we're kind of a seasonal business. Even though we're sort of sailing year-round now, we're seasonal by nature of when people sign up. And when we get, another example, we announced this racing program that Nikki's doing, and we had, I think, 17 people sign up for both races in the span of 2 weeks.
No, in the span of like 3 days.
So that's a huge influx of cash. So like, it's like, to predict that is very difficult. And when you have a gap, it's like, you start worrying about running out of money and all the rest. And It's and like I said before, the numbers now we're talking about. I mean, our numbers, our like revenue over the course of a year, we're like in the millions now versus before. And that's I know you don't like me talking about this stuff. That's okay to say. I mean, anybody can just do the math on our website and figure out total up the amount of bunks we have and how much revenue that is. But the expenses are right there. I mean, there's very little margins because of how much, like the two things that we've really made central to like what we're doing in the business is we want to have the best boats, the best equipment, and the best people, and that's expensive. So that's I think what stresses. I mean, that's the core of it. Are people going to sail with us, and can we afford this?
But I think this is nothing unique to anyone. I'm sure your dad is wondering, is people going to come and buy hot dogs?
How many hot dogs are they going to sell? I mean, that's the nature of business. I mean, that's it. That's the nature of we have a business now that in the past, when we first bought Eastbjorn, we said, well, if this fails, you and I have a boat that we can afford if we have other normal jobs. That is no longer true. If this fails, a lot of people are going to lose jobs. The investors that put money with us, they're going to lose out. It's not just about you and me anymore, and that stuff's scary.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes, and what else are we not talking about here? I mean, I guess what are your, this has been such a big thing to get to this point. What are your hopes and dreams now? I mean, we haven't even talked about the quarterdeck, which is like a whole other aspect of the business that we've sort of concurrently been building up, thanks in part to the boost that COVID gave us, which also that feels like a long time ago, doesn't it?
COVID, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, didn't you say like this year was kind of like finally the last people that had paid to sail during COVID have actually been delivered their trips?
Yeah. So COVID affected our business, dramatically, because we had to cancel basically 1.5 season, 1.5 year of passages. So last year was the 21 calendar that turned into 22, and even one of the 22 trips turned into 23 with Falcon. So this year we had a passage that was supposed to happen in 21.
Wow.
The Biscay passage.
That's hard to believe. I think the other thing too, like looking back to about the stressful stuff, is what feels like such a relief now is last year, last summer and fall, we had both boats sailing, Eastbjorn and Ice Bear. We were participating in the sailing, being away from home, but at the same time we were trying to refit Falcon. We had like so many things going on at the same time, plus the quarterdeck, plus the podcast, all this other stuff. And now we only have boats sailing. And like just not having that other aspect, I mean, that was a whole business on its own, kind of like managing that refit. And like, that's, I think, for me, where I feel the biggest sense of relief in that things are just happening.
Yeah.
There's no, like with the Falcon refit, there were decisions that had to be made every single day. What are we going to do? Big and small, tiny decisions. And like now those they're just not there.
Yeah.
So that feels pretty cool.
It's like you scaled down one part of it, took away a little bit of stress.
So we've been in a pattern of every couple of years, partly because I can't help myself with the ideas, and partly as consciously trying to keep things fresh and exciting. First it was Eastbjorn, then it was Svalbard, then it was OGR. Well, that didn't happen. Well, yeah. So then it was Ice Bear, then it was OGR, then COVID. That wasn't exciting, but it was something else. And then it was Falcon, and like now what? So like, what are you looking forward to now?
We did add the racing program. That's pretty cool.
That's true. Yeah, Nikki's racing program, 2 races a year. I didn't even think of that. That's a very good example.
That's like the new this year.
So that's new this year, and then I think it's time we can talk about 2025.
Yeah, we are planning going to Pacific.
Finally. Do you remember when we first started talking about this?
It's a long time ago.
Do you remember we actually had like postcards made for the boat show? I think way back in 2019 about us like going to the Pacific on Eastbjorn before we even had the second boat. And it's happening. The program will not be published by the time you hear this. This is going to come out on Tuesday, but at the beginning of Boat Show, which is 2 weeks from today, we're gonna publish it in conjunction with Boat Show. So consider this a preview. Falcon, to be specific, is going to the Pacific in 2025. How does that feel?
Good, because I feel like we thought about it long enough now. But it's time.
It feels like the obvious progression as well, because it's actually not doing anything new in the sense that it's still the same types of trips from A to B to C with the same staff, with the same boat.
I mean, the cool thing is we're going to accommodate the people on the west coast of the US a little bit more, because for them flying all the way to Europe versus flying, so the Pacific feels like a far away, but in one way for a lot of people listening in that area, it will actually be their stomping ground.
I'll tell you what, when I was sitting down to make the Pacific calendar, like I open up Google Earth, I look at Jimmy Cornell's book. In fact, James the sailorman, and I spent a lot of time looking at Jimmy Cornell's book when he sailed to Greenland with us to talk about like when you go, like you and I are so familiar with the Atlantic and destinations, weather patterns, even flights, harbors we know have facilities. I am completely and utterly lost in the Pacific. Like, not only that, but you've got the equator, you're going to cross the equator, so now you're flipping the seasons and the weather patterns and stuff, and it has been a very big learning curve to come up with, to fit together a puzzle that actually works the way our calendar kind of just flows, and avoid cyclone season, find places that people want, like the classic places you want to go to, but also how can you get to and from. That's been really challenging. Is there anything you're really looking forward to, like destination-wise? What are you most excited about, whether you're on the boat or not for it?
I think it's just exciting to go to new places, because we've been to a lot of places in the upper Atlantic, and I think it's time to start seeing some, like we've been enjoying visiting new places in the Atlantic, and I think it's really cool now to start enjoying some new places in the Pacific. So
next week on the podcast, I'll probably announce that the calendar is actually open and you can see actually where we're going. So pretty exciting. Mm-hmm. I think it's like it doesn't feel like, talk about gut feeling. It feels like the right thing to do.
Yeah, it does for me too.
There's no hesitation. It feels like, yep, this is logical. This is the right thing to do. It's time. Mm. Other thing exciting for you and me, we're going to sail together in November.
For the first time since January 2020.
January 2020. You were pregnant. It was your last trip on the boat before Axel was born. It's the first time since Axel was born that you and I are going to sail together. Mm-hmm. How does that feel?
That feels really good. I think it's going to be fun to be able to do that together, because we sailed Spica in the summertime, but we've had Axel with us, and now we can be back in the environment that you and me are used to be together. It's kind of like the good old days.
Well, you and I haven't worked together, and you and I have learned so much from the other people that we worked with. I mean, you've worked with a bunch of other skippers. I've worked with different mates, and it's going to be really fun to see what happens when we both sort of switch into work mode and how that interaction goes, because we haven't had it since 2019, basically.
Yeah. No, that's going to be great. I'm really looking forward to that. And we have another trip in the summer.
Next summer.
You and me are doing together.
And I think like now with Axel, like he's definitely old enough. He knows what we do now for work. He knows where we're going when we go, and he's comfortable enough and confident enough that he will be fine.
Yeah. I mean, last night you went before his bedtime. You went out to record, and of course he wasn't super happy for the first few minutes, but then he accepted it, and
it was cool. I sat him on the counter. I was like, Axel, like, you know, I do this because I want to do it. Like I'm working. I know I have to work, but like I want to do this. I'm going out to. I was recording a podcast with Ben from Out the Gate last night, and I was like, Axel, you know, you can come out and record some stuff with me sometime. Would you like to do that? It's like, yeah, and it's just really cool. Like that's been the challenge, or that's, I think, one of our next challenges, to keep him engaged so that this is a positive thing for him and not a negative.
Yeah, so you feel like he's part of it and not something that takes this side of us doesn't take away from him.
It adds to him, yeah. So
we've
cool.
been trying good with that, like having him on Falcon, and he gets to.
Well, he moved to England with us. I mean, he knows the whole staff. He knows the boat. Yeah. So cute. He calls Falcon Dad's boat, Papa's boat, and he calls Spica Axel's boat.
Yeah.
So Spica is Axel's boat.
Yeah.
Which is very cool. Cool. Well, like I said, this hasn't been easy. And what I didn't touch on it so much as I thought I would in this podcast. But if you listen to Ben's podcast, Out the Gate, we spent a big chunk of that talking about how much this has affected my mental health. And I feel like I'm finally able to create the space to actually address that, but it's taken a toll.
So what is the takeaway from the podcast, Andy? What is your top three things that you said in the podcast?
Top three takeaway things. It's just fun to reflect. We don't do this enough. We're so forward thinking with planning. It's like, it's just nice to think back and remind yourself how far we've come and what we've done. I mean, just think back to like when like I look at like we're building a business that started when we had all of our friends to the house here in Sweden. It's like, okay, here's the team. That team has changed substantially since then. But now we're bookending that. Next week, we have a meeting again back at our house with August and Nikki, the new sort of full-time team. Adam, you'll be missed. And it just feels like that's sort of the bookend. It's like that's where it started, and now we're over the hump, and this is where we are now. So it's a really fun kind of bookend. The thing we haven't even mentioned, do you know September is 10 years of the podcast?
Woohoo!
Which we completely disregarded because there's been other things. I know, yeah.
We should do yeah.
So there you go. What about for you? What's a big takeaway for you? I don't think that was 3, but it was 1. What's your one takeaway?
Was it stressful? Yes. Was it worth it? Yes. I mean, I think that's like with everything.
Yeah.
Is it still stressful? Yes.
Yes.
Is it still worth it? Yes.
Yeah. I agree.
Do we still have fun? Yes.
Yeah, true.
So I think that's like good takeaways.
Well, thanks, Mia. It's time to go pick up the boy from daycare.
Thank you.
This has been fun.
Until next time.
Hold fast. Big thanks again to Forbes Horton Yachts for sponsoring this episode of the show. If you want to buy or sell your dream boat, go to ForbesYachts.com. That's FORBES, ForbesYachts.com. Thanks also to AG1 for sponsoring this episode of the podcast. To get your free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase, go to drinkag1.com/onthewind. That's drinkalphagolf1.com/onthewind. On the Wind is the podcast about sailing, created by 59 North and hosted by me, Andy Schell, and also by Nikki Henderson, August Sandberg, Emma Garshagen, and occasionally Ben Doer. The show is mixed and produced in Frederick, Maryland by Lee Cumberland. Ads are read by us, the hosts, and occasionally by 59 North's bosun Adam Brown and podcast producer Lee Cumberland. Episode artwork and website show notes are done by Laura Parent in San Francisco. The intro theme music is composed and performed by former podcast guest, musician, and sailor Cameron Dale, while the outro music you're hearing now is, of course, by our friends in Bergen, the Stormweather Shanty Choir. We love hearing from our fans, so send your questions and comments to holdfast@59-north.com, and please do us a favor and review the show on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, hold fast.
I made up me mind that I was inclined to go to sea no more. No more, no more, to go to sea no more. I made up me mind that I was inclined to go to sea no more. As I was walking down the street, I met sweet Angeline. She said, come home with me, me lad, and we'll have a cracking time. But when I awoke, it was no joke. I found I was all alone. My silver watch and my money too, and my whole bloody gear was gone. Was gone, was gone. My whole bloody gear was gone. It was when I awoke, it was no joke, for my whole bloody gear was gone. As I was walking down the street, I met Big Rapper Brown. I asked him if he would take me in, and he looked at me with a frown. He said, last time you was paid up with me, you talked up no score. But I'll take your advance and I'll give you a chance to go to sea once more. Once more, once more, to go to sea once more. I'll take your advance and I'll give you a chance to go to sea once more. Sometimes we're catching whales, me lads, but mostly we get none. With a 20-foot oar in every paw from 5 o'clock in the morn. And when daylight's gone and the night's coming on, we rest upon our oars. And oh boys, you wish that you was dead or snug with the girls ashore. Ashore, ashore, or snug with the girls ashore. Oh boys, you wish that you was dead or snug with the girls ashore. Come all you seafaring lads that listen to me song. When you go a big boating, boys, make sure you do not go wrong. You take my tip when you come off a trip, don't go with any whores. But get married instead and have all night in bed and go to sea no more. No more, no more, to go to sea no more. Get married instead and have all night in bed and go to sea no more. No more, no more, to go to sea no more. Get married instead and have all night in bed and go to sea no more.